The courtroom was a stage, and the gavel was its conductor's baton. On a crisp morning in July 2025, the legal world shuddered as news broke of a seismic event. A lawyer representing Samantha Markle, the estranged half-sister of Meghan Sussex, had been struck with Rule 11 sanctions, totaling a staggering $320,819.88 in a separate legal matter. This was no mere slap on the wrist. It was a judicial thunderbolt, a legal sledgehammer swung with precision to demolish the credibility of an attorney who had dared to file paperwork so atrociously sloppy, so ridiculously incompetent, that it was deemed utterly devoid of merit. The sanctions were not just a fine, they were a public flogging, a full-blown legal humiliation that reverberated far beyond the courtroom walls. For Samantha Markle, whose defamation lawsuit against Meghan Sussex had already been branded as a desperate and delusional gambit, this was a catastrophic blow, one that threatened to reduce her case to radioactive rubble. Yet for Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, it was poetic justice, a cosmic rebuttal delivered without her lifting a finger. As the legal world buzzed and social media erupted, one truth emerged: nonsense would no longer be tolerated in the courts. To understand the gravity of this moment, one must first grasp the nature of Rule 11 sanctions. These are not penalties handed out lightly. Reserved for the most reckless, unfounded, and unethical legal filings, Rule 11 is the judiciary's way of saying, enough. It is a mechanism designed to deter attorneys from clogging the courts with frivolous claims, from wasting judicial resources on arguments that lack even a whisper of substance. When a lawyer is hit with Rule 11 sanctions, it signifies more than a mistake. It declares that they knowingly submitted work so baseless, so devoid of merit, that it borders on professional malpractice. In this case, the court's decision to impose a $320,819.88 fine was a resounding condemnation. The lawyer's paperwork was not just flawed, it was an embarrassment, a masterclass in incompetence that left legal scholars shaking their heads and colleagues whispering in disbelief. This was not a case of a minor oversight or a miscalculated risk. This was a filing so egregious that it demanded a response of biblical proportions. Note: the original chapter does not mention. The implications for Samantha Markle's defamation lawsuit against Meghan Sussex were immediate and devastating. Samantha's case, filed in March 2022 in Tampa, Florida, had already been teetering on the edge of collapse. She had accused Meghan Sussex of defaming her through comments made in a 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview, where Meghan described growing up as an only child, and in the 2022 Netflix documentary Harry and Meghan, which Samantha claimed painted her as a fame-seeking opportunist. From the outset, legal analysts had dismissed Samantha's claims as garbage, a lawsuit rife with desperation and delusion. Judges had repeatedly thrown out her complaints, with U.S. District Judge Charlene Edwards Honeywell ruling in 2023 and again in 2024 that Meghan Sussex's statements were either protected opinions, substantially true, or not defamatory. Samantha's third attempt to amend her complaint had failed spectacularly, with the case dismissed with prejudice, meaning she could not refile. Yet, undeterred, Samantha's legal team had pressed on, filing appeals and new claims, each more tenuous than the last. Now, with her lawyer reeling from Rule 11 sanctions in a separate matter, the lawsuit's already fragile foundation crumbled further. The sanctions were a spotlight on the incompetence of Samantha's chosen legal team. Described as catastrophic and incompetent, the lawyer's actions in the unrelated case had exposed a pattern of reckless behavior that cast a long shadow over Samantha's defamation suit. The $320,819.88 fine was not just a financial blow. It was a public declaration that this attorney's work was unreliable, untrustworthy, and unworthy of the court's time. Legal experts speculated that the sanctions would make Samantha's case radioactive, deterring any reputable lawyer from touching it. Who would risk their career to inherit a lawsuit already tainted by judicial rebuke and public scorn? The blowback was explosive, with the lawyer's name trending on X, not for brilliance or tenacity, but for incompetence. Posts on the platform mocked the full-blown legal humiliation, with hashtags like #Rule11Reckoning and #SamanthaSinks gaining traction. For Samantha, the sanctions were a humiliating setback, a reminder that her crusade against her half-sister was unraveling in spectacular fashion. For Meghan Sussex, the situation unfolded as a karmic uppercut, a vindication that required no effort on her part. The Duchess, who had stepped back from royal duties in 2020 and built a life in California with Prince Harry and their 2 children, remained untouchable, unbothered, and unbreakable. She had faced relentless scrutiny, from tabloid attacks to family estrangements, yet emerged stronger each time. Samantha's lawsuit, with its baseless claims and melodramatic rhetoric, had been a minor annoyance in the grand scheme of Meghan Sussex's life, a mosquito buzzing at the edge of her empire. Now, with Samantha's lawyer sanctioned and her case teetering on the brink, Meghan's resilience was underscored. Her legal team, led by the sharp and unflappable Michael J. Kump, had consistently dismantled Samantha's claims with surgical precision. Kump's statement following the 2024 dismissal, "We are pleased with the court's ruling dismissing the case," was a model of restraint, a quiet flex from a team that knew victory was theirs. Meghan, meanwhile, continued her work, from launching the Parents Network to address online harm to speaking at events like South by Southwest. The sanctions against Samantha's lawyer were, in a way, a cosmic rebuttal, a reminder that truth and competence would always prevail. The broader legal world took note. The $320,819.88 fine was a warning shot, a clear statement that frivolous filings would be punished brutally, not just dismissed. Courts across the country were growing weary of lawsuits designed more for publicity than justice, and Rule 11 sanctions were becoming a favored tool to restore order. The sanction against Samantha's lawyer served as a case study, a cautionary tale for attorneys tempted to file claims without merit. Legal blogs dissected the ruling, with headlines like "Judicial Thunderbolt Strikes Reckless Lawyer" and "Rule 11 Sanctions, the Cost of Frivolity." Law schools might one day teach this case as an example of what not to do, a textbook illustration of how to obliterate one's credibility in a single filing. The fine was not just a penalty, it was a deterrent, a message that the courts would no longer tolerate nonsense. For the public, it was a rare glimpse into the machinery of justice, a moment where the system worked to hold the reckless accountable. Note: the original chapter does not. Samantha Markle, however, was not one to retreat quietly. Despite the sanctions, despite the dismissals, despite the mounting evidence that her case was a lost cause, she vowed to fight on. Her lawyer, Peter Ticktin, had called the 2024 dismissal very upsetting and promised an appeal to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, with his reputation battered by the Rule 11 sanctions, Ticktin faced an uphill battle to salvage both his credibility and Samantha's case. Samantha's latest filing, lodged in November 2024, accused Meghan Sussex of defamation in the Harry and Meghan documentary, claiming the Duchess's statements had incited death threats against her. The filing was marred by an embarrassing error, referring to Prince Harry as the Prince of Wales 9 times, further fueling perceptions of incompetence. Legal analysts predicted that this new lawsuit would meet the same fate as its predecessors, dismissed for lack of evidence and actionable claims. Samantha's persistence, once seen as tenacity, now bordered on obsession, a quixotic quest that only deepened her humiliation. The cultural impact of this legal